Hey, it's Karlie.
Hey, it's Shamina.
And
We
are
emotionful.
I like that. Like SpongeBob.
Yes. So, before I know I can see her little tail sticking up. She's like a shark, like doo 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 doo. Let's see. Before we jump in, we want to thank our patrons.
Kevin Gallagher, Therese Gallagher, Joanne Stewart.
Thank you for your support. Today, we are going to be talking about relationship safety and security.
Security! Does anyone know Bonquiqui?
No, I don't know that. No.
I will cut you.
Oh. Yo, didn't we say that in my mom's, was it calculus back in high school?
I will cut you. Security!
I think I remember this moment where I think you said that in class. I think you said it to my mom or you said it to somebody we were sitting with or something.
Your mom was like, what did you just say? I was like, I will cut you.
That's too funny.
Bonquiqui, y'all.
Are you guys ready to get emotionally full?
Are you?
Are you?
Are you?
I have to, this is a side note because I know your people are planning your 10-year reunion. So my peoples have gone to like Facebook and they were talking, I think like last week or the week before, they're like, are we going to have a 10-year reunion? I hope we do. I hope people plan it. What's it going to look like now? And so, Mia had to chime in. I was like, well, typically it's the class president that plans the reunion, and then I like tagged him and I was like, this is what the class of 2012 is doing. So maybe we'll reach out to them for help because our high school doesn't exist anymore.
I know, but a lot of our people are not happy, but I'm just like, you're not going to make everyone happy. So
I know it's like high school all over again, like trying to plan.
It really is with the amount of social media too. It's like very difficult.
I feel like it would have been easier back in the day to like plan a reunion because you would like send out a written invitation and saying like, will you attend? And here are the event details. And like, that was it. Or maybe they had like committees.
I don't know, but I think back in the day it was more exciting because you're like, I wonder what they're up to. I don't have no idea what they're doing with their life. Yep. Now it's like, oh, I saw them on Facebook. I think they're on like baby number 3 and they work here and this is their husband. It's like I know their life even if I don't know them. Like that sounds creepy, but I mean that's social media, I guess.
My grandfather still goes to his like high school reunion. I think they do it like every year now or every like couple of years just because there aren't that many left. But even my grandma, they used to go to their like high school reunion more frequently, and I was like, that's crazy that it's like their 50-year reunion.
I was gonna say, isn't it like 10, 25, 50?
I don't know. Is that a thing?
It was, I think. I think those were the years. I don't know if that's the thing now.
No. Don't know.
I guess we'll find out.
All right. Back to the topic at hand. Relationship, security, and safety. What do you... Oh, you're going to say it again? You and I had talked about this because I was like, oh, what if this is the topic? So I'm going to know, when you hear relationship, safety, and security, like what comes to your mind?
Me? Are you asking me? Okay. I think, I feel like it's hard. Initially, I thought like physically, And so initially I thought physically, and I initially, like, my first thought was with online dating. And there's some people out there that are like, let's Netflix and chill for like the first date, and I'm like, absolutely not. Like, it needs to be somewhere in public. But then after me and you had talked, I'm like, okay, that makes sense too. And so I think overall though, you want it, like, I think you want physical safety, obviously, but then you do want like emotionally and mental security and safety in that relationship. And I was watching a TikTok as I was walking Blue, and I don't know, it was a TikTok, but it was this woman who said she was a relationship therapist for like over 2 decades, and said that the healthiest relationships she sees, what she finds makes them healthy, is that both people aren't trying to change each other, and they're like aware of the person's flaws and everything like that. But you were sitting so still, I thought you were frozen. So I was like, should I say something?
I've been told that I have a really good like poker face, and I've mastered like the telehealth like therapist, just like sitting and listening. You're not the first person who's ever said like Shamina sits so still.
I was like, okay, let me see if she blinks, because I don't know if she's frozen and I've lost connection to her. But so she was just saying, and I was like, I think that's like really, because like, she was like, they've accepted their flaws and their partner's flaws, and not like accepted, like, it's like they're aware of it, and they're not trying to consistently change their partner to make them what they want them to be. Hold on.
We are taking a momentary pause while Karlie is checking in on some things.
I had to shut my door. I could hear, and I was like, I think it's weird when like people can hear me recording.
So I agree with that, but I also feel like I have an issue with that, because especially if people have like history, whether it's like a trauma history or just like their childhoods and how they've been raised or developed, then I think there is like this certain level of acceptance. But also, in order to get like a really healthy and secure relationship, both people may have to change.
I agree with that, but I think where the issue comes is if I'm aware of my flaws and I'm okay with them, but then my partner is pushing me to change, like, yeah, we should better ourselves, and you want your partner to be supportive of that. But if your partner is pushing you to change before you're ready to change, that's not healthy in my eyes. You both need to be,
Blue's got the zoomies. Yeah. Well, yes, I think both people have to like agree. It can't just be like, oh, I'm not changing, but you need to change. Like, I'm not a problem kind of thing. I think that's like super unhealthy. But like, say you have some type of like response to your partner where like you get really mad, or like you yell at them kind of thing, and like you recognize, or your partner recognizes like, oh, this is just what they do, and I have to like be okay with that. I think that's unhealthy. And being able to say like, hey, like, listen, this is what you do, how do we work on that together kind of thing.
Oh, I agree, absolutely. I think it's just like, a balance, because if you're pushing this person and they're not ready for that change, I'm not saying you have to accept it. Then you have to decide, they're not willing to change yet. Do I want to sit around and wait for them to get to that point? So, yeah. But definitely.
Yeah. All right. So I brought this topic up because I think it's a super important topic and something that we don't talk about enough. I actually had this conversation earlier in the week with one of my clients about, like safety and security in relationships and what that kind of looks like. And I think, Karlie, you bring up a really important piece of like the physical safety, especially in the dating realm right now, because it's mostly online dating and using some type of like dating apps. And so why don't you like tell our viewers, because I know you've had experience with this in the past, like what happens when, you know, you want to, like, you've connected with somebody and, you know, you want to hang out and they're like suggesting like, hey, why don't you come to my place and, you know, we can meet there and Netflix and chill.
If they suggest that, my first response is, first dates, I like it to be something public, that we can go and then we can decide from there. And if they keep pushing it, then we just don't meet. I'm not gonna, you're not gonna convince me to. And it's not even just going to their place. I don't want them over at my place either for the first time, you know, like I don't know you. I'm not just gonna let you into my home and whatnot. So I did have it where one guy was like, kept pushing, like, oh, just come over and we'll watch a movie and I'll order food, da da da. And I was like, no. And then I was like, I like to go somewhere like public first. And he was like, then what do you want to do? I was like, hey, like, if you've never planned a date that if it's outside of not going to your house, you don't know what to do, I'm gonna pass. Like, you know, like, but that's just a pet peeve of mine of like, if you're incapable of planning something, especially like the first date. But yeah, I mean, like, usually guys will ask me like, what do I want to do? Like, they'll say they want to like meet up or something. They'll be like, what do you want to do? And then I'll just like put it out there like, oh, like the first date, I like to do something public and you know, and just not private,
Mm-hmm.
because there's too many scary stories out there. And like, it's crazy, I saw on Reddit, it was like what women like want guys to know. And so like women would like post, and like women are like, that you need to realize, like, we don't want to do anything alone with you when we're first getting to know you. And they're like, I don't think some men realize it, but like, I'll go out to dinner with them and then they'll ask to take a stroll in the park, and it's like, that makes women feel very uncomfortable, and I don't think that they realize that. But it's like women are constantly having to be aware of their safety, because unfortunately it's like always compromised. I mean, not always, but like, there's always that concern if you're out somewhere, if it's dark out. It's like, I, you know, I think like when I was younger, I wasn't as aware of it. And I remember I worked at like kind of a sketchy mall when I was in college. And I was just like, I'm fine. But my cousin gave me mace and she was like, carry this in your hand when you are walking to and from your car, because I would get off at like 9, 10 o'clock, you know, and just like, you know, I think I didn't realize it as much. But I remember one time I went to the casino, which is a public place, with my ex at the time. And I had to go to the bathroom. And when I was coming out of the bathroom, and he saw me, but he was a little bit away. When I was walking to him, some guy put his arm around me and started steering me in another direction and walking with him. And I was like, what the hell? And like, I looked at my ex, and then my ex came up and was like, let go of her, get your hands off of her. And then he was like, oh, and I was just like, literally, we're in a public setting, and he just kind of made it seem like super casual, put his arm around me and started steering me in another direction. And I was like, and like, you know, obviously then my ex stepped in, was like, get your hands off of her. But it's just like, it's unfortunate because it's not fair, you know, like,
Yeah.
man never has to worry. I don't want to say never, but like, I don't think they think about it to the extent that women do.
Definitely. And especially like on a first date, or, you know, we live in an area where human trafficking is like a major hub. And
Mhm. Huge.
yeah,
I didn't realize how big it is. It's huge.
like when the
Huge.
Super Bowl, I actually had to take a training about like human trafficking. And I think it was like the year that the Super Bowl was going to be in Tampa. And so they had highlighted on, you know, these people like plan so long in advance to like be at certain places, and, you know, what the whole trafficking scheme kind of looks like. And you know, we're not taught that when we're young. You know, we're taught like stranger danger, but we're not like, human trafficking is a real thing and like this can actually happen, and we live in this area where this is a huge port to be trafficked. And So I agree. I think it is a huge discrepancy, especially in the dating realm, of women having to be kind of on guard. And, you know, if like you're walking in a park alone, or like you're doing anything at night alone, you know,
it's not even at night though, honestly,
well,
because
yeah.
it's just, I think that's the more common maybe, but I can recall I was going on a jog at like 11 a.m. when I lived like in Tampa for school, and a cop pulled over and was like, "You should not be doing this jog." And I was
Oh,
like,
I remember that. I remember.
yeah, I'm like, it's the middle of the day. What do you mean? And he was just like, there was already like a guy that was like following you. And I was like, I'm doing my jog. And I did do my jog, but my roommates that came with me, they went back to the apartment. But
You
it's just,
what? You left by, you continued by yourself after what?
I was stubborn, man. I was stubborn.
You're
I
lucky to be
still,
alive.
by the grace of God.
Oh gosh. But yeah, definitely. I mean, in the dead of the night, or just in general, like we have that type of mentality. Like we have to, you know, like carry your keys in between your fingers when you're going, you know, to your car, and different things like that. And it's frustrating. You know, you can't even like go outside and go for a walk in the middle of the day without having to think like, is somebody going to say something to me? Is somebody going to stop? And, you know, even when we were younger, I can't even imagine, you know, like how many people would just like pull by, stop, say something, and like just keep going, and how easy it would have been for somebody to like get out of the car.
And like not even going as far as human trafficking, but just like catcalling. Like, I want to know, has catcalling ever actually worked? I mean, because these men think it does. And I personally feel like I don't think that it's ever actually worked. And yet to this day, so, and it's just like, ew, you know, like imagine you walking down the street and I'm like, hey, sexy boy. Like, I don't think you'd like that. Like, I mean, who knows?
I mean,
I guess when it's happening to you every single day, or like enough that it's just like,
yeah, where you have
bro.
to like watch what you're wearing. You know, I know if I like go out for a walk in my neighborhood, if I go on the main street, not a good idea, because there's so much more cars, there's so much more traffic. Depending on what I'm wearing, that also has like a contributing factor. And it's like, I just want to go outside and exercise, and I have to like
Mm-hmm.
change myself and my body in order to feel comfortable enough to go outside and to exercise.
Yeah,
So
it's an unfortunate series of events.
woman's life, series of unfortunate events.
For real, we could have a whole podcast on that.
Well, I think we have a whole history book on that.
True.
So physical safety, super important in relationships. But what I want to get into, wow, is the emotional safety piece. And I kind of phrased it to Karlie when we were talking about it earlier, is emotional safety. I don't necessarily consider that of like, my partner's going to harm me. I think that'll go in like the physical safety realm, but more so of like, can I be vulnerable with my partner? Can I trust that they will show up for me? Because a lot of times, and this happened, I think a lot in my past relationship that I've talked about before on the podcast, is like, I would go to my partner in a place of like emotional support, and they weren't able to show up for me, or they didn't show up for me in the ways that I needed. And so it wasn't safe. And I stopped going to them for support. I kept things inside. I kept things hidden. And I'm a withdrawer to the T. So when things happen to me, I go inside. So it's really challenging for me in general to just like open up to people when I'm feeling vulnerable or I need that type of support. But if I'm sensing, you know, I'm going to be judged or criticized, or you're going to dismiss how I'm feeling, then I'm going to cut that off completely, and I'm not going to put myself in that situation. And I think a lot of us do that because the risk outweighs the reward.
Mm-hmm. I think like for me, because you said you're a withdrawer, I think I'm typically not. Like I like to voice how I'm feeling, and for me it's freeing, and it I can't hold it in. You know me, I don't do well holding in how I feel. I have to voice it and let you know how I'm feeling. Um, but I think back like when I do get to that point that I feel like I can't, I feel like that's when I know like it's really bad, because it's like that's not who I am, and I'm feeling not even like you said secure or safe enough to go to you. Um yeah, and I know me and you had brought up because you have been listening or you listened to the first episode, and I remember you brought back, I don't want to go too deep into it, but you brought up some points, and I we were laughing about it now, but I'm like, oh, and I feel like, and then you brought up another individual that I had kind of like talked to, and I feel like it was two different extremes, you know, like with my ex, I couldn't voice how I was feeling, but then with that guy that I had been kind of like seeing for a little bit, I could voice it, but then I felt like me voicing it, I felt like he didn't understand maybe, or I don't want to say he didn't respect it because I feel like he wanted to respect it. So I feel like that's a hard word, but maybe he didn't understand, because then after I had voiced how I felt like he still wasn't sticking to like that boundary, I guess, of me saying like, hey, I'm not really comfortable like moving this quickly. And then like in a half hour, you're like trying to like hold up on me, and I'm like, I don't like this.
Yeah. And I think even if you withdraw or if you still communicate how you're feeling, there's still that risk of the emotional safety. Like, can you be that person for me? Because even with your ex, you would voice how you were feeling, but I can remember you would have so much anxiety before, even like you would call me and be like, Shamina, this just happened, this is what I wrote down, read it to me, and then tell me like, how does this sound, should I change anything, should I do this, oh my god, I'm about to send it, oh my god, I sent it, oh my god, I'm waiting for him to reply. Like, even though you would still communicate, there was that hesitancy of like, he didn't feel safe, because I don't think he would have had that reaction and that type of anxiety if he felt safe enough of like, hey, this is how I'm feeling, like I just want to talk to you about it, kind of thing. And so I think that shows like, even though you do communicate, there was still so much anxiety, and I have so much anxiety that I don't communicate, and I just shut that shit in the deepest darkest pit of myself.
Well, and I think it also comes back to validation, you know, like for me, I communicate, but I want you to validate me. You don't have to agree with me,
Right.
but I want you to validate how I'm feeling, because you don't get to tell me if my feelings are right or wrong. And that was a really big thing of like, he never validated, like, even if it wasn't based on our relationship, but say I was just venting about a day at work, he would immediately go into giving me advice on how to fix this like to fix it. I'm like, I'm not asking for that. I just want to vent to you right now about how I'm frustrated with what just happened. I'm not asking for your advice on how to fix it. And so I would start to shut down then too and not talk to him, because it's like, you just keep wanting to tell me how I can make it better, how I need to resolve. And like, it was always the thing, you know, now that I think back, because when we had met, I was working at a hotel, and he would be like, I don't like how some of these guys are talking to you, like da 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 da. And it was just like, I don't either, but it is what it is. Like, I'm not gonna, you know, like, unfortunately, again, as a woman, sometimes you have to take shit, because it's the name of the game, you know, like, yeah, I don't want to, but I'm not gonna lose my job.
Right.
So, but yeah, but then like when it did come to the relationship, I agree. I know I would like be like, oh my God, should I say this? And like, even again, like with the episode, our first episode that we did, you know, how I had said I was so nervous to post it, because there was a part of me that was like, even though we weren't talking and it was over, a part of me was like, is he gonna get mad at me? Like, did I say something that could get him mad at me? And then, you know, like it was always like walking on eggshells with him, because I didn't know how he would react. And like when I did voice like, hey, like you doing this made me feel this way. He's like, here we go. Like, my day's ruined. And I'm like, I've been
my
sitting
day's
on this.
ruined now.
Yeah, exactly. He's like, you always have to do this in the morning, right? When I'm getting to start my day. Like, I was having a good day today.
Yeah. And I think it's like those small moments where you're not validated or the other person gives you the type of support that you're not looking for, which 9 times out of 10 is advice or telling you how to fix the problem. That's like what everybody jumps to because we don't know how to sit and validate somebody or just like empathize with how they're feeling. We're not taught that. We're taught like, well, let me fix it. How do I make it better? And each time that happens, I think it like puts a little crack in the emotional safety that we have with partners or even friendships. You know, there are friends that I know not to go to if I want to vent because I'm going to be met with like judgment or criticism or I'm going to be shamed. So like, no, I'm not going to at all when something happens. Like that's not happening. So and the crack just kind of like grows and grows and grows until, you know, we hit this breaking point and it shatters.
Mm-hmm. And I saw this, guys, TikTok is my WebMD, but I did see it and it was really interesting because it was saying how it's not what you say, but it's how you say it. Like most times, it's not even what you're saying and it's how you say it. And I 100% live like by that. And like the guy who was talking about it said, like, he's like, it's funny because 90% of my followers are women, but I'm trying to get it across to men because not, women also can struggle with it, but unfortunately, like, it's more generalized with men. And I 100% like, I think that like, I'm like a full on of like, you can tell the truth, but not be an asshole telling the truth, because I feel like some people are like, I told the truth. Like, I'm sorry if the truth hurts. And it's like, the truth doesn't have to hurt. Like, you can let someone down, but be empathetic about it or be, like compassionate. Like, you don't have to be an asshole. And like, to me, like, that is just like a huge thing. And I think that was something that I struggled with my ex too, of like, you can be honest and straightforward and not be a dick. And like, that's, but I think because like, I think women know how to do it more because of the way that we're raised, like going back to like safety, and like we're always kind of like stroking their ego to make sure that and so like we kind of have to step down. And so like, I think, like, I'm not saying all women are like this, but I think for a majority of us, it comes naturally to not be an asshole immediately. And like when you're letting someone down or just being truthful, because we're always taught like, you can't hurt a man's feelings, quote unquote. But obviously we do that like with everyone. But then I feel like with the man, like it just goes back to like being raised. Like, I feel like men aren't raised to be nurturers and to be compassionate, and they're just like, play sports and be a man. And so then like there's this imbalance of, this is how women are raised, and so we're raised like that, we want a man like that, but men weren't raised like that, so they don't know how to, like, and then they don't know how to, but then a lot of them aren't even willing to learn.
Yeah. Well, I think a couple of things is like, one, the traditional like gender norms that comes up. And I know you and I, we just watched the new season of Bridgerton because we love that show. And that's kind of like the, like even like back in the day, like that traditional, like subservient, even the language is very different, very submissive. And we still have that in our culture now. And then also a really good example that came to my mind that we talked before on the podcast is, it was during the breakup and I was at your house, your parents' house, and we were like in the kitchen cooking something and you were talking about your ex. And I looked at you and I was like, Karlie, I love you, but I cannot hear any more about this. Like, I'm just getting really tapped out. And that's like a really kind, compassionate way of like calling you out and telling you like, this is my boundary, because I could have been like, Karlie, shut the F up. I can't listen to this anymore. Like, you're really annoying me. And like, I felt frustration, I felt annoyance, but I could communicate that in like a really soft and gentle way, because if I would have done it the other way, like you would have been shut down and you probably would have not talked to me anymore at all. Not like at all ever, but like, you know,
at all ever. No. But no, it's true. And I just feel like, again, like you said it perfectly. Like you could have said that. And then if I would have said something to you, you'd been like, well, I'm just being honest. But again, it's like, but what you had said was also honest. And like but it didn't like, yeah, it did like hit me like, dang, but it didn't hit me like, wow, Shamina's a bitch. Like it was just like, it made me be like, okay, I need to start being more conscious of it made me kind of be more thoughtful instead of becoming defensive and then feeling attacked, and I think like you were talking about Bridgerton, but it's again like, how can the woman please the man? It's never vice versa of how can the man please the woman, because that's not how we're raised really. And but yeah, no, I just 100%. I think that there's always a way to tell the truth and not be an asshole. And like, for instance, with that person I had been kind of talking to and I had cut things off, I had said like, oh, I'm just not really like, I just don't think that this connection is working between us. I could have been like, I don't find you attractive. This is over. You're being, but like, and being like, you made me feel uncomfortable when I tried to be vulnerable. Like, but it was like, it's not necessary, like, why am I gonna put someone down for me to tell the truth? I don't need to do that.
Yeah. And we've talked before how like language matters, but it's also the way that you deliver the message that matters too. And I think even not only to other people, but like to ourselves, because the way that we speak to ourselves is really degrading and shameful for most of the times. Like we'll tear ourselves down, but there's a really different way of even talking to ourselves of like, hey, like I'm not comfortable with this, or I don't like this, instead of like, you're a piece of shit and you need to like figure yourself out kind of thing. Mm-hmm. And we live in this world where like we get that negativity or we get that really harsh response from people. And again, I think like stereotypical men are generationally taught that that's how you respond, that's how like you assert yourself, that's how you communicate in those kinds of relationships, and it doesn't work.
And I feel like it doesn't work, but it's starting to even more not work, if that makes any sense to anyone.
It does.
Because I don't know if men doing that makes them feel more masculine and like cool and powerful, but if I'm being honest, I would never ever date a man like that. And that's not attractive to me. Like, to me, that's like, ew. Like, if a guy did that, I'd be like, now you're ugly. Like, you could be like the most beautiful man ever, but if that was how you spoke, I'd be like, ew. And like, I just feel like, I don't know, I really feel like there's a shift right now in roles, in a sense, in that women are standing up for themselves and they're no longer accepting all of this generational of what has, like, obviously it's not going to change overnight or anything like that, but I do feel like these changes are coming about, and we're not accepting it, and we are starting to call them out on it, because it's like, that you think that, and like there's this thing I saw that like if someone says like something crazy to you or like mean or something, you can just respond with like, I hope you heal. And like, to me, I'm like, yes, because it's like, I'm not going to engage in your fight for masculinity or alpha or whatever. I hope you heal. I hope you know that you don't have to act this way to be seen, to be heard, to be valued, to be powerful. You could be a compassionate human being, and I would probably respect you a lot more than someone who thinks you like own me or have power over me or you're better than me. No.
Yeah. But I also think it depends on the intent behind the behavior, because if it's used as like a way of dominance and power, then there's a lot more malice behind it. But I've also seen where it's a trauma response and people will gaslight, or people will get really defensive, and it's not from a place of I'm trying to intentionally harm you. It's I'm feeling attacked, and it's like you're poking a really big ass grizzly bear, and you keep poking the bear and poking the bear, and it's going to come at you with its claws out. And people get like that too, is even in conversations, you may say something to me and I'm taking it personally, or that I'm feeling attacked now, and so I'm coming out to you with my claws. I'm not trying to hurt you, but you may get scratched in the process. That's a good analogy. I'm gonna like coin that.
Yeah, I agree absolutely, but again, this is why I think that mental health screening should be a requirement, a yearly mental health screening, and just a quick 30-minute session, ask a few questions, and then maybe like, okay, you need to go to therapy once a week, or you need to go
here's my script for therapy for you.
Yeah, or like, I know we'll never get there, but like we have yearly physical screenings that we're supposed to do. Why can't we have mental health screenings? Because you are right, like no one's perfect. And so then when you raise a child, like, yeah, there are going to be flaws in that child, and like they're not going to be perfect, but someone has to make the step to break the cycle of getting help. And it goes back to like all of the stigma that comes behind like mental health and therapy. And I get it, because like even me coming from a background of having my master's and bachelor's in social work, when I decided to go to therapy, I was even scared, because I was just like, oh my God, like I'm admitting, that I can't do this. But like, you have, like, it's just like, I don't know. I think it's so like liberating and freeing when you finally do, because I'm like, now I think back and I'm like, how silly was I? Like, this is like probably one of the best things that I could have done for myself. It has its pros and cons, because when you start to become self-aware, you realize the amount of people around you that lack it. But I just think that like it is hard to break those generational cycles, but someone has to do it, or else we are just going to continue and continue, and then like we're not going to get anywhere. We're never going to get anywhere, because again, we're just going to be going in circles. And like it's I don't think you realize it when you're doing it, of breaking a cycle. It depends. Like for me, I think going to like therapy now, this is a bigger cycle that I'm not realizing. But when I think about like ending the relationship with my ex, that was a cycle that I knew I was ending when it happened, because our relationship was a cycle, and it was just like, can I continue on this loop? And then when I decided no, obviously that's when I was like, okay, the cycle is over, but then like the bigger cycle is, am I going to allow the same stuff that I allowed in my past relationship? So I think that's kind of like the bigger cycle of the little, like you realize these little cycle breaks that you make, but then what's the bigger one and the bigger one, And so for me, like that was the little cycle, but the bigger cycle of that is, am I going to allow this in my next relationship? And then like the bigger cycle of that is, am I going to pass this down to like children if I have them? And
I think it even sometimes gets complicated. It's not just like, okay, I got out of this, I'm not going to let this happen again. But like for me, I have a particular dynamic with one of my family members. I have a similar dynamic with my partner. And so I'm trying to break two cycles, which is a familial generational one. And also, how do I heal these wounds through my current relationship, and like building this, secure, healthy romantic relationship. And I think that's hard, is when one bleeds into the other, or even vice versa, because I'm doing like double the work. I've had to deal with like the family stuff, and then it bleeds over into the relationship, and then the relationship like impacts or will like trigger something with the family. And so it's like this constant kind of like push pull, having to like sort through all of these threads. And that's a challenge, especially having a unhealthy blueprint for what relationships are supposed to look like. Like I have to create that. I don't have like this is what a good relationship is supposed to look like and how you're going to do it. And I don't think people like talk about that enough.
Mhm.
And, how many of us come from dysfunctional family dynamics. And so when we do partner with somebody, we have to break the family cycles, but also how do we have healthy relationships with our partners or even friendships if that's never been modeled to us?
Mhm. Yeah, and I think like you said, like you're kind of having to break two cycles at once. I think when you decide to do the work and do that work on yourself, it's a snowball effect. And I think I've said this before, but like when I decided to put that work in with my relationship and like learn to heal from that, it was a snowball effect of now I was realizing all of the other toxic relationships, family, friends, whatever it was. And it was very overwhelming because it's like, holy shit, like I thought I was just gonna have to heal from this toxic intimate relationship that I have. But now I'm realizing like this is not a good relationship and I don't want it. And this is not a good relationship and I want to heal it. And this is not and it can become very overwhelming because it's like I just wanted to do one thing and now I have all of these things I want to do. And so like it is hard. It is hard and it's not going to happen overnight. I don't think for anyone. And like I think like for you, it's funny because I feel like for you, you were aware of the dysfunction and toxicity and like all the things that you were having, in your life around you as you were growing up. You know what I'm saying? For me, I was in this bubble thinking that I had and don't get me wrong, like I'm not comparing like to that, but I think you realize that there are flaws in everyone in every relationship. And like for me, it's just hitting me now. And that so I'm seeing like someone's relationship that I thought was so great and I wanted base mine off of it. I'm realizing like it's really not that great. And I don't really want a relationship like that because I want to communicate with my partner. I want to, and I'm realizing that these people that I had looked up to thinking that that was the relationship I wanted. It's really, I'm not saying it's the worst thing ever, but it's like I'm realizing like there are certain um core values of a relationship that I need to have that I feel like this one lacks. And so and now as I get older, I'm trying to have to navigate, like you said, of having that healthy relationship because I'm not having to build it from the ground up, but I'm there are things I'm taking and realizing like, okay, no, I don't want that. I this is what I'm looking for.
Yeah. I tell my clients all the time that like once that awareness light bulb comes on, it's like this ripple effect and it's really hard to shut it off. And
Mhm.
it's so funny that you bring up, like, oh, I saw how unhealthy and toxic my relationship was. And then I started seeing how other people in my life like fit that mold once my insight turned on. And I have so many clients who they go through a very similar process of like they're healing from one thing and then their whole life changes because their eyes have kind of been opened of like this pattern has been repeating in all areas of your life. And then, it's kind of like,
Mhm.
how do I rebuild from here? And you bring up a good point of like, I knew when I was younger that like this was domestic violence, like this was unhealthy, this was toxic. But I think what I didn't know was how it was impacting me.
Mhm.
And that's what I found out later. And I still continue to learn of like, oh, I do this thing or I am this way because of like the trauma that I experienced. And so I think there's still so much about myself that I don't know and I'm still learning, but I knew like what was happening. I was like, this isn't okay. This isn't safe. But then
Mhm.
also, even like the relationship dynamic piece that I learned between my mom and me and my brother and me and like how these things impacted, I think it's a bigger like shock to the system, so to speak, if you live in this bubble and then all of a sudden it gets popped and then now you're like, "Oh my god, I'm drowning. I don't know what to do." I had some insight of like this is what happened, but now it's like, why am I like this? Why do I do these things? Why is this happening to me? Why don't I remember, like
Mhm.
10 years of my life trauma and because these things happened and there's a
Trauma.
reason. I hate that word. My therapist, she's like, Shamina, it's because of blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, this is stupid.
It is. And it's funny because I feel like you explained it really well of like, for me, it was like I was living in this bubble and then like the past 2, 3 years it was popped and it does feel like you're drowning because it's like I had this vision of what I thought it was and then I'm realizing like it was not that, and like something that I am having to learn that is taking a while is like this, although it's not perfect like I thought it was, it's not like as devastating as I think it is, but because I think it's like just so like shocking to me right now, I'm like this is like, but then like my therapist will remind me like having a family dynamic is so hard of like people like met like that's like one of the hardest dynamics to have, is like the family and just like every family has issues, like whether it is you see it or you don't, like they're there. And so like for me it's like accepting that and then understanding like even though it's not perfect, it doesn't mean that it's like this horrible devastating thing. But I think sometimes I get really dramatic about it because I'm not used to it. And so I'm like, this is like the worst thing ever. And like, I just don't think I know how to handle it sometimes, because for I think some people, they probably like laugh it off and be like, oh, like this again. But to me, I'm like, I don't know what to do because I've not had to deal with this. And now all of a sudden, all of these things are coming to light. And it's like, hello.
Well, I think it's always been there for you, but you've had like these rose-colored glasses on and you've been in like your little bubble of like we're good, everything's good, but these things have still been happening, but now you're aware of like that's what this is called. This is the dynamic that's at play, like that's occurring because I don't think it just like pops out of nowhere and you're like, "Oh my God, I noticed all of these things and this is all new to me." It's new to your awareness.
Mm-hmm.
But I think
Well, that's like you were saying of putting when you finally decide to put that work in, it's like, what did you say? I said snowball effect, but you said a ripple effect.
yeah.
And that's exactly what it is. It's like when I decided to put that work in and be like self-aware, now I'm seeing it at every part of my life.
Yeah. My dog she's chewing fuzz. What a ham.
She is.
What a ham. And I think sometimes there's almost this sense of like grief and loss that gets brought up because you thought that your life was a certain way or you viewed it in one way, and then you're seeing a completely different perspective. And it doesn't mean that you weren't happy during that time or your life wasn't really great, but there's also like this loss of what I thought it was.
Mm-hmm.
And the whole like ignorance is bliss kind of thing, now you don't get to shut that off again. It's very, very hard to like go back into that hole and like
Take me back.
reform your bubble. And I think that's really hard for people because we live our lives thinking a certain way about things and feeling a certain way, and then this we get this insight, and now there's so many more emotions that get brought up, and like how do I grieve this life that I thought that I had,
Mm-hmm.
but it's been this way all along. I just wasn't aware of it.
Totally off topic, but not really. We should do an episode on family relationships because they really are probably the hardest relationships to have because it's like you're told that they're blood and they're family, but then it's like so you're attached to these people and like I can't think of the word, but trying to just like mesh, especially as you get older and form your own values and have your own life and then come back. Maintaining family relationships is so much work and it's just like very interesting because like obviously you grow up with these families and you're like close knit or those are your people for a majority, like they're your support. And then you grow up and you have you form your own opinions and your own friendships and things like that. And then like like I still sometimes it's so crazy to me that like at one point I lived with my whole family 24/7, and like now we all like, have our own lives, but it's just like it seems so weird to me that like at one point we all lived together in a household. So crazy.
I was just thinking about that. I was talking to my brother a couple days ago, and I was like, I have a brother. Because
Yes.
I live on my own. I don't talk to my brother as often as you may talk to your siblings, but I'm like, I have a sibling, and we used to like live in a house, and like this was a thing. And I'm like, because sometimes I feel like I'm an only child because I don't talk to my brother that often. And then I'm like, I have like family. Dude, they're real. This was a thing.
No,
So
a
I did
hundred
that.
percent. And like now they are starting to like have their own families. So that's just wild as well. But it's just like you're my brother, but like you're a dad. Like that's weird. Like, like you're a husband, like weird. But it's just like and then you think about it and it's like for me, because I'm the youngest, it's like you guys are literally the only people that have known me my entire life. Crazy. Crazy. Like you literally known me my whole life.
Yeah.
Don't get me started because that is just woo, so crazy.
I feel that. I feel that. I have a picture on my desk of my brother and I when we were oh God, I must have been like 9 or 10. I got the bangs like just straight across. Not a good look. I have like it looks like a bowl cut, but I have my hair back, and it's just so crazy to think like, yeah, we took like family portraits and like that was the thing, and how different our lives are as adult siblings.
Families are wild, man. Wild.
Indeed.
The whole concept of them is crazy.
I mean, people like you go to graduate school to become a marriage and family therapist. Like there's a whole graduate program just on learning family systems and family dynamics. And I have a graduate certificate in it. So I don't have as much expertise or knowledge as somebody else who is licensed in that. But I can remember the classes that I took, and I was like, this is a lot, and it's like a lot to juggle. And I remember when I was in grad school, I was going to work with couples, and I was like super passionate about it. And then I got out and I was like in the field in the real world, and I hate working with couples. I do not do it at all. I rather work with an individual. I'll sometimes do family sessions, but they are not my fave because there's so much going on, and usually not everybody's like on board, or somebody's just being blamed of like, you need to fix this person and then the rest of us will be good.
Well, it's funny because, I went to school for social work. I don't do it, but I remember having to take one class about like family systems and things like that. And I remember we had to like play out like a family therapy session. And I just remember like my professor pretty much saying like, it's interesting because as you were raised with a family, like unknowingly, everyone has a role. And so like, and I don't remember what they are now, but like you said, like everyone has this role that they play, and typically based on your are you husband, wife, and what sibling you are is what role you typically get, just from whatever. And it's just like it's crazy. It's so crazy because you have to, like you said, a lot is going on when you have a family session, so you have to know how to like navigate that. And just like, and you, like you said, usually it's people think that this one person is the issue and no one else needs to change, but and that's why having it's just so crazy because like navigating a family is so difficult because everyone plays a role, and sometimes you play a role that you don't even know, and you're not even aware of the role that you're playing in it.
Mm-hmm. I took like a family systems, and I took a marriage systems kind of class in grad school. And so for the family systems, we had to pick like a family, either in like a movie or TV, and do kind of like this whole analysis and like how we would do a family therapy session with this family. So my group, we picked Shameless, if you've ever seen the show. So we picked like the Gallagher family, and that was interesting, to say the least. Of like, that was the probably one of the most dysfunctional families we could have picked, but it turned out really well, because there was like the substance use, and there was the different roles that were at play, and the parentification of like the kids, and having Fiona, the oldest, having to like raise her younger siblings. And so there was like so much rich content, and we were like, holy crap, like how are we going to sort through all of this just to like do this assignment? But it was really cool just being able to kind of see those roles in TV and pop culture come to life.
Yeah, I knew I never wanted to be a therapist. Like, you just bringing it
That's
up.
Karlie's
like,
catchphrase.
Never. It just is so stressful. Like, again, like, we can finish with this. I don't know how therapists do it. Like, I don't know how you, like, I think I've said this before, but I had a professor that was like talking about like therapy, and actually in her grad program, she went somewhere in New York. Part of her program to graduate, they were required to go to therapy. But I remember her saying, like, to be a therapist, you have to have a porous heart. You have to be able to take it in, but you have to be able to let it go. I don't have a porous heart. I hold on to it all. And I just think that I would be, I just don't know how you do it and like have a life. Like, like, I don't know how therapists help people with like their issues, because there are some serious issues out there that they hear, and then they have their life and they just like, huh, this person just told me this crazy ass story, but I'm gonna go out to eat with my friends. Like, what? No, I'd be like in a ball, like, oh my god, oh my god.
Sometimes I feel like an imposter because of that. I'm like, this is a totally separate life. And like, I think like I'm a therapist, like I'm somebody's therapist, and like they confide in me and talk about stuff. But that's why I always say, like, if I go MIA or I don't talk to you, or like I don't, I do what I do, it's because I can't. Like, I don't have it in me to like talk to people. Or I even had a friend reach out last night, because I've had like some things going on in my personal life. So I was like reaching out to everybody, just giving them an update what was going on. She was like, oh, can I call you tonight? And I was like, yeah. And then I went back and I was like, no, I have 4 sessions back to back to back, and I get off at 7:00. I am not going to want to talk to you when I get off of work, and I'm going to be really exhausted. And she was like, okay, like, no problem. You're good. I'll call you tomorrow. And I was like, all right, cool. That's fine. But initially I was like, I'll have time. I can talk to her. And I was like, let's be realistic. You're going to be really tired, and you're not going to want to talk to anybody, which was exactly what happened. So
Yeah. I give props to therapists because they have to deal with their own stuff and other people's stuff. That's crazy.
Fine-tuned skill.
I don't have it. I don't require that.
So, are you guys feeling full yet?
Are you?
Are you? I have a headache. I'm feeling full.
I'm hungry.
So, what do we want to know from our viewers?
Maybe like, what is something that someone does that makes you like question your security in a relationship? Like, are there any like quote unquote red flags of someone does something that you're like, I don't feel like I could be secure with them, if that makes sense?
And what do people do that tell you, yes, this is safe and I can confide in you or go to you for support? Give us both.
Yeah, that's actually good. Let's hear the good stuff.
Yes, we like the good things. And like us on Facebook, Emotionful Podcast. Like us.
Instagram, Emotionful
Follow
Pod.
us. Yep. Subscribe below. I was like, can you like people on Instagram? And I was like, no, you can like photos, but you have to follow the page. That's where it's going. And then subscribe down below. We'll see you guys same time, same place next week.
Bye.
Bye.